Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second of EMR's webinars about our journey to net zero carbon. I'm Roger Morton, Managing Director for Innovation at EMR. Last week, we talked about logistics and how we're decarbonising our logistics operations. Next week, we're talking about how we're working with our commercial partners upstream and downstream to help them and us decarbonise. But this week, we're talking about our operations, one of the biggest causes of carbon impact for our business. And I'm joined today by three of our most senior operational managers, Ian Shepherd, Scott Bamborough, and Anthony Marrett. The format today is that we're going to introduce ourselves first. We're all here today at our head office in Warrington. We then got videos from Ian, Scott, and Anthony explaining what they're doing individually in their operations to decarbonise our business. And then there was an opportunity for you to ask the panel questions. So please do put your questions in the comment box on the YouTube screen at any time, all the way through the session right from now. And I'll see those coming up and I'll put those questions to the panel at the end of the videos. So quick introductions now, around about 20 minutes of videos. Hopefully those will be really interesting for you. And then I'll put your questions to the panel. So firstly, let's do some introductions. Ian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name's Ian Shepherd. I'm the Managing Director of the UK metal recycling business, which comprises of 70 locations.
Thanks very much, Ian. And Scott, welcome to head office.
Hi, good morning, and thanks for joining, everyone. My name's Scott Bamborough. I'm the General Manager of our Liverpool operations, which is home to our UK's largest export terminal and largest UK shredder, currently handling about 1.5 million tonnes per year.
That's a huge amount of stuff to recycle there, Scott. So thanks very much for joining us. I know you're very busy. And Anthony, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, morning, everybody. My name's Anthony Marrett. I'm the Managing Director of Invenens, which is the technical arm of EMR. I work very closely alongside Ian and Scott, taking their byproducts, and we then process those products and extract some extremely valuable materials such as non-ferrous, plastics, aggregates, and also precious metals such as gold and silver. And also part of my responsibility is looking after the engineering and consulting functions too.
That's amazing. So you're actually running a gold mine amongst a few other things, Anthony.
There's gold in there, Roger. Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay. So you can see, everyone, that we've got some real experts here from EMR. Great opportunity for you to ask them your questions and put them on the spot about how we're decarbonising that very complex mix of operations that we have here in the UK. As I said, please put your questions in the comments field during the session, and I'll put those questions to the people here. So right now we're going to hand over to Ian, who's going to take you through a video presentation of our overall decarbonisation strategy, and then we'll move on to Scott and Anthony, who'll talk about the specifics of our operations. So thanks for your attention, and we'll look forward to seeing you the other side of the videos.
Hello. It's never been more important to focus on managing our impact on the environment, and at EMR we're focusing hard on improving our performance, and we want to support people and businesses to also be more sustainable. It's essential that we all play our part in decarbonisation, as it's key to driving the green recovery of the global economy and reversing the impact of climate change. So I'd like to talk to you about our exciting plans for decarbonisation, which we call our Decade of Action. I'll also explain the measures we're taking to become carbon net zero by 2030 on indirect emissions generated through our energy providers, and share how we'll reach a target of carbon net zero by 2040 on all direct emissions upstream and downstream in the value chain. Our sustainability strategy is built around 4 pillars: energy productivity, renewable electricity, movement of people, and material handling and movement. To drive progress in these areas, we've joined 3 key initiatives established by internationally respected non-profit organisation, the Climate Group. EP100 to improve energy productivity, RE100 to accelerate transition to renewables, and EV100 to switch to electric vehicles. There are a number of key areas of focus in our energy productivity programme. We're making good progress on determining our baseline energy consumption, including electrical energy, diesel, gas oil, petroleum, and LPG. In order to measure and improve our productivity, an energy management system is being developed to roll out across the business. All sites will have energy efficiency targets and regular audits, and all colleagues will have access to a training programme to learn about the efficient use of energy. We've made some great progress already in educating our colleagues in lean techniques and how to achieve more productivity with less energy consumption. We've already started our replacement programme for any equipment that doesn't meet our energy efficiency standards, and we've also been making best use of advancing technologies. And a great example of this is a recent investment in power inverter technology. That investment has proven a 20% increase in power efficiency on our 6,000 horsepower shredder in London, which has very high electricity consumption. So in summary, by 2023, 30% of our sites will have the energy management system implemented, and we will have demonstrated an improvement in energy consumption per tonne of material handled from our 2020 baseline. And by 2030, we'll have achieved 100% implementation and 10% improvement in consumption. The next pillar in our decade of action is renewable energy. There are a number of ways we'll transition to renewable energy. We're influencing electricity procurement from third-party suppliers, and I'm pleased to say we're already well ahead of target at 85% in the UK. In the USA it is more challenging, but we're working on it. There are ongoing feasibility studies to explore implementing our own renewable electricity generation. And where this is not feasible, we'll work with suppliers to purchase electricity from renewable sources, and we're working hard to identify and commit to renewable electricity wherever possible to support greening of the grid. We're also determined to remain progressive and continually review our strategy in line with economic and technological change. To summarise, by 2023, 30% of our electricity purchases will be from renewable sources, and this will rise to 60% by 2026 and 100% by 2030. Now we come to the movement of people. We've started by reviewing the transport needs of the business. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed both the way we work and how we communicate. So we've worked hard to embrace remote working and digital communication to cut down on unnecessary journeys. We're developing a group-wide sustainable transport policy which covers limited unavoidable travel. We've also reviewed our vehicle procurement and leasing arrangements and have now started our transition to low-carbon vehicles. Finally, a group-wide electric charging infrastructure is also in the planning stages. So, to summarise, by 2023, 30% of our cars and light commercial vehicles will transition to electric power, and 10% of our heavy goods vehicles will also transition. By 2030, this will include 100% of cars and light vehicles and 50% of heavy goods vehicles. Worldwide, EMR handles around 10 million tonnes of material on its journey to be recycled, and this requires a significant amount of plant, vehicles and vessels to move this material across a vast network. I'd like to now talk you through our plans to minimise our carbon footprint in the handling and movement of this material. We've started a review of all plant and equipment to evaluate how the business can operate in an even more efficient and environmentally responsible way. One of the key areas we're focused on is electric and low carbon alternatives for mobile plants. We've already made several fully electric installations, and when purchasing our largest material handling plant, we've chosen hybrid options that are enabled for full electrification. Heavy goods vehicle procurement and leasing arrangements are being reviewed, and we're working with our suppliers of road, rail and sea freight services to advance low carbon freight. And as previously mentioned, we will continue to educate our colleagues in energy efficiency and lean techniques so they can do more with less. I feel it's really important to show our teams how they are performing on a day-to-day basis so we can keep that momentum going. So in summary, 5% of new material handling equipment and heavy goods vehicles will be powered by electrical, hybrid, fuel cell or biofuel sources by 2023, and this will rise to 20% by 2030. Thank you for listening. Now, over to my colleagues, Anthony and Scott, who are going to look closer at how our operations team are looking to reduce their carbon output.
Hello, my name is Scott and I'm the General Manager for our sites in Liverpool. I've been with EMR for 19 years and in that time I've seen a lot of changes. Our focus on cutting carbon emissions is an exciting yet challenging prospect. As EMR transitions to becoming a net zero business by 2040, one of the significant challenges lies in cutting emissions on our site themselves. Thanks to them cropping up on hundreds of TV shows and films, most people think that they know what a scrapyard looks like and how it operates. In reality, I think a lot of businesses, even our closest partners, would be surprised at just how fast-paced and technologically advanced a modern EMR site really is. That's understandable. Our business is a side of the waste industry that most people never see. So while our sites are very similar to those handling other forms of waste, in that you'll see materials separated into piles, those piles of material tend to be different grades of metals. Our job is to sort, segregate, clean and grade the material that we receive and turn it into a high quality raw material package that a steelworks or manufacturer can make into the next generation of new products. All of this takes energy intensive equipment, from material handlers which move the material on site, to the huge hydraulic forces needed to cut and densify materials via shearing, baling or shredding machines. As EMR processes everything from fridges to cars, trains to aircraft carriers, all of this happens at a huge scale. Unsurprisingly then, our processing equipment accounts for a large percentage of our carbon emissions, 22% in fact. This is starting to change. EMR has made a bold commitment to hit net zero by 2040 across our entire value chain, and we've given ourselves big targets to hit over the next 10 years as part of our decade of action. Backed by the Science Based Targets initiative, this commitment includes switching to renewable power and transforming our commercial and light commercial vehicles to EV. It also means making significant changes to the way we operate on site. Firstly, EMR is currently investing in the next generation of electric-powered technologies to replace our diesel-based machines. Our Liverpool dock site is our first UK site to receive an electrically enabled material handler. Weighing in at a huge 450 tonnes, it's the largest in the UK and will help us transition one of our busiest sites to net zero. We already operate a similar machine at our Nijmegen site in the Netherlands. And at our Willesden site, one of our largest capacity shredders was recently given an upgraded electricity-based power system, which will significantly reduce the amount of energy we consume per tonne of steel recycled. I'm not going to pretend that this is simple or easy, nor do we have all the answers. For example, the electrically enabled material handler in Liverpool is currently powered by a diesel generator system. What's changed is the investment means that our depots are ready for a greener future as soon as it's deliverable. To allow our new material handler to become fully electric and zero carbon, we need to install a new electrical distribution network around the Liverpool dock site so that we can plug it in wherever it needs to work. This will take further time to gain the necessary permits and more investment to install the network. It's a big journey, but we've started on it. And as EMR invests in its future, more opportunities to cut emissions on our sites will emerge. In fact, we've taken a lot of the insights and learnings from this sustainability drive into our new dock site in Glasgow, a new site that's being built with the electrical capability today, ready for the transition into renewable and clean energy across all our operations in the decade ahead. This will help us to meet our 2030 commitment to improve energy productivity for total kilowatt hour per tonne of material handled by 10%. However, it's not all about large-scale machinery and innovative technology. Our decade of action commitment has been embraced by all of EMR's leadership team, because we know that creating real climate action in a sector like ours will only happen if it's driven from the top. EMR's Our Decade of Action strategy is about much more than a paper commitment. Each one of our employees has an important role to play. By asking our teams to look at how much electricity and fuel is consumed per tonne of material the company produces, we encourage our material handler operators to consider whether each transfer of material around the site is essential. Do they need to leave machines idling between uses, or can they turn them off? Even switching a light off when the staff leave the office can make a real difference when repeated across all of our sites. Small actions, but they all contribute to our decade of action and our net zero strategy by the 2040 targets. Then there are our products. As we develop net zero recycling solutions, we'll focus on creating cleaner materials with fewer impurities. Not only will this mean that EMR is producing high quality ferrous and non-ferrous metal from recycled products, but it also makes our operations more efficient. For example, if we can improve the yield of steel for our customer by 10%, that means that the steel mill needs to use 10% less energy to produce it, which is great news for our customers. While these products will be expensive to produce, and attract a premium rate for EMR by producing steel more sustainably and more efficiently, our customers will see the benefit both on their bottom line and by getting closer to meeting their own sustainability targets. Again and again, the mission to reach net zero creates new opportunities and business benefits up and down the supply chain. These benefits mean EMR is also able to invest more in some of the most innovative processes anywhere in the recycling industry. Right now, we're working out how to harness the power of artificial intelligence and machinery learning to find out further efficiencies in our on-site operations. This might be the grading of metal, or it may be used to look out for impurities. It could mean simply finding new ways to reduce energy consumption. What's amazing is that here, EMR is able to benefit from advances happening across many different industries. My colleague Anthony will provide more detail about the ways we're innovating our processes. But one example is the way that we're investigating AI systems that are currently used to improve supermarket food quality. This is similar in many ways to the challenge of finding and sorting metals on a conveyor belt. So we're actively researching how we can use these machines to improve the efficiency and accuracy of what we do. As we develop learning around our processes, they will get better at what they do, increasing efficiency and helping us drive down our carbon impact. So, when it comes to reducing our site carbon emissions to zero, EMR is working on a number of fronts. We're updating our technology, harnessing the power of our employees, and ensuring that we're a step ahead when it comes to delivering new, more efficient products and processes. It's a complex task and the solutions are not always easy or obvious, but I'm proud to say EMR is getting the job done. I'll now pass over to Anthony, who can talk in more detail about the technology that we're developing and how EMR's business model is helping us invest in this period of change for the industry.
Thanks, Scott. At the heart of EMR's plans to become a global leader in sustainable recycling are the products we deliver to manufacturers, from ferrous and non-ferrous metals to plastics. As Scott said, these will help create the next generation of consumer goods and building materials. Yet, EMR's processing operations currently represent 19% of our carbon emissions. We have committed to reduce this to net zero by 2040. This is how we will play our part in the creation of a truly circular economy. To do this, EMR must invest and innovate in the way it processes the material that arrives at our sites every day. My job is to oversee a team of very clever, passionate people at EMR who arrive at work every day to do just that. This much focus on research and development is expensive, but thanks to our family-owned business model, which reinvests 99% of profits back into the business each year, EMR is well placed to make this investment, and we're doing so across all of our business. As Scott mentioned, one area where we constantly seek improvement is in the quality, grade, and purity of the materials we produce to enable steel makers and manufacturers to use more recycled material in the future. Across the supply chain, there is an understanding that we need to hit net zero and equally keep more of our resources closer to home. This is why the opportunity for EMR to work with local UK steelmakers and users to produce high quality green steel is so exciting for our business. This is a new generation of ferrous metals, which can be used for a range of applications, which have previously relied on virgin material. It's an area of focus for businesses and governments around the world, and EMR is making sure that the UK isn't left behind. We're working closely with all parts of the steel supply chain here in the UK to help them find new ways to use recycled materials in their products. This helps them reduce the carbon impact of their finished buildings, cars, and other products. We shouldn't see waste as a problem to be solved. We should see it as an urban mine that provides our economy with sought after metals, plastics, and many other valuable materials. EMR and other companies in the recycling sector are mining that resource and providing sustainable materials to the rest of the economy. Some of EMR's most eye-catching recent innovations will capture, process, and reuse rare earth metals that exist in the electronics which power our modern world. REAP, Rare Earth Extraction from Audio Products, is a project launched last year which aims to recycle the high-strength rare earth magnets which exist in loudspeakers. In partnership with the University of Birmingham and Hypermag Limited, this project will help the UK recover valuable neodymium that would otherwise be lost, ready to be reused in new products. The processes developed in this project will have many applications, including the recycling of cars, where rare earth materials are used in electronic seat adjusters and window motors for conventional cars, and in the main drive motors for electric cars. This is just one project EMR is working on. We're also currently working in partnership with academia and the car industry as a part of the Recovast project to build a new supply chain for end-of-life electric vehicle batteries. We have around 10 to 15 years until large volumes of electric vehicles arrive at our yards, but we're putting the work in now to ensure these batteries can be reused, remanufactured, or recycled safely and efficiently. Needless to say, this is a huge shift from the combustion engine powered cars that EMR has been processing for more than half a century, and we're getting ready for this change now. It's impossible to go through every opportunity that EMR is exploring with our partners, but needless to say, we're developing new and improved processes in everything from the recycling of copper wiring in everyday electrical products to more intelligent and sustainable metal extraction from demolition sites before a building even comes down. Meanwhile, our plastics division, MBA Polymers, is exploring ways to improve the sorting and recycling of the huge quantities of waste plastic the UK produces every year. Underpinning this innovation is a team of world-leading engineers and scientists at EMR, who I'm privileged to work with every day. To give one example, EMR's Materials and Processing Development Engineer, Dr. Joseph Ecke, comes from a recycling background, but also has a PhD in chemical engineering from Aston University. His expertise in waste management and waste to energy is helping keep EMR at the very forefront of developments in our industry. And unsurprisingly, he's very passionate about collaborating with customers and partners who are doing the same. So while we're quite protective of some of the industry-leading processes we're developing, these changes aren't all taking place behind closed doors. In the years ahead, visitors to EMR sites will see huge advances in the way we work too. EMR can benefit from advances in many other industries too, such as the way food processors ensure that every grain of rice in your dinner isn't broken or discoloured, or how supermarkets make sure that every tomato is the right shape and colour before it hits the shelf. Technologically speaking, these examples aren't too different to the challenges of finding and sorting metals on a conveyor belt. As EMR looks to embrace a cleaner and more sustainable future, improving the processes and products we deliver to customers will provide a path towards net zero. I hope you can see that this investment, research and development, is also going to provide a wealth of new opportunities to our business and our partners. As COP26 arrives in Glasgow, let's use this opportunity to talk more about how we can meet this challenge together.
Well, thanks very much for staying with us on those videos, and thanks very much to Ian, Scott and Anthony for putting together those presentations. I think it's quite interesting, that last point that Anthony made there, that we really need to be collaborating with everyone in our sector, and that's why we're so pleased to see so many people on this, viewing this session today. We all have to work together in order to get to net zero and save the planet, which is our objective. See, we've had lots of questions coming through, so thanks very much for that. Please keep them coming if you have any more thoughts that come out of the discussion. But I'll start to put some of these questions to my colleagues here. And the first one from Mike is saying, have we considered battery storage or combined heat and power to reduce our heating and power generation costs? Maybe put that one initially to Ian.
That's a great question, Mike. I'll start with the combined heat and power. It's interesting to note that the power supply for our Liverpool operations via our landlord Peel Ports is from a combined heat and power plant. So we don't have any plans ourselves, but we are taking power directly from a combined heat and power plant at our biggest UK energy consumption site at the moment. On the battery storage, we do have an ongoing project at Oldbury. I'll hand over to Anthony, who knows much more detail on that than I do. Perhaps you could expand on that, Anthony?
Yeah, interesting question. Obviously, electric vehicles, they're going to be a huge number of batteries, so we need to find something to do with those. One option, obviously, is recycling them. The other option is to reuse them. So we've been working on a project based at Oldbury, where we have significant grid connections, to create a battery farm. So that's using end-of-life batteries, almost rack mounting them like servers, and then using that capacitance almost to level power in the grid, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, that's
exciting.
There's so many opportunities being thrown up by the decarbonisation transition that we almost don't know where to look. That's great. Thanks very much, chaps. Another question's just come in for Scott, maybe. When will you be able to install the electricity supply needed to run that Liverpool crane that you mentioned fully on power?
Well, again, another great question. It's we're currently carrying out a feasibility study. As I'm sure you can imagine, it's a rather large feed that we need to get into the port. Not only that, the power supply needs to run up to what is our busiest area of the site, right up the quayside, so that we can essentially plug it into these huge cranes. It's not a simplistic answer, but we're some way on with that, and we hope to have an answer in the not too distant future of how we can achieve that.
I guess, Scott, it's a lot more complicated than plugging your vacuum cleaner in when you've got a huge crane that moves around and has a 6-inch diameter cable.
It certainly is. It's quite a piece of engineering.
Yeah. Okay. Well, actually, this is another question maybe for Scott. Did you find that employees quickly bought into saving power by making small changes like switching off the lights and so on?
Well, we'll start with the lights being, I think, the most simplistic answer. We were able to install the light sensor equipment within our offices so that when the room's not being used, the lights will simply turn out. Whereas with the mobile plants, there's a little bit more of a challenge around that. And the key is, what we found is taking the data from our telemetry equipment that's fitted onto some of our particularly newer mobile plant equipment, being able to see what hours it's active, when it's under full load, and when it's sat idle, and essentially where cost savings could be made. and using this detail and relaying it back to the employees, whether it be through huddles, team meetings, etc., to really sort of explain the value that comes with that. So it's progressing well, let's say.
Maybe do you want to follow on with that a bit, Anthony? Because I know you've been involved in that telemetry project, not just on the mobile plant, but on other parts of our operations.
Absolutely. I mean, there's one ethos that I'm a fairly simple character, but I do know if we don't measure it, we can't manage it. So we have been exploring, I guess some people call it the big data, some people call it the Internet of Things, but essentially harvesting information from the bits of kit that we use. It could be a shear, it could be a shredder, it could be a bit of mobile plant, or some of our separation facilities, harvesting all that data that they kick out and try and put them in a form, essentially an online portal, where we can log in and actually look at the performance of our assets, how well we're utilising them, and obviously the better the utilisation, the cheaper it is for us to process material, but also the lower carbon as a result. So that's a work in progress, Roger. So I can see that growing and growing, to be honest.
That's great. Okay, and actually this is another question that's come in, I think probably most appropriate for you, Anthony, and maybe Ian wants to pitch in, but when you mentioned green steel, low carbon steel, when do you think the UK steel industry will be ready to accept more green steel?
Yeah, I'll probably answer from a technical side. Ian probably has a bit more depth on the commercials, but we have in our hands recycled steel, which is definitely a part of the solution for decarbonising the steel products that are used. But then we are also developing green steel, which is really a honed product that will offer significant benefits to those steel makers to help them lower their carbon footprint. So we've been developing that product. We've been working with partners who they vary, I would suggest, in terms of their maturity. But those who we've worked with, we've had some fantastic results that really has excited them and both us, and really encouraging us to do more and more and more of that. It's a fascinating area of our business. You know, what we saw as a recycled product now is a green product and has fantastic impact, carbon impact.
Thanks very much, Anthony. Anything you wanted to add on that, Ian?
Just to say, I've never felt the steel industry feel as progressive as they do today. I mean, they're really focused on the value and use of all of the products at the moment. And you see now it's more important than ever for the climate emergency, but also just looking at the recent spikes in energy costs, they just can't afford to put that energy into non-metallics. So we're working really hard to clean up our products and see how we can improve the value in use for our steel making partners. So really excited the way it's going at the moment.
Thanks very much, gents. Yeah, certainly what I've heard is that they've all the major steel companies have made very firm commitments to get to net zero by 2050. It's a bit later than companies like EMR that can transition sooner, but it's such a huge challenge for the steel industry that they have to get going right away, even to get to net zero by 2050. So there's certainly echo what Ian is saying there. We're seeing huge engagement from the steel industry worldwide with the scrap industry, the recycling sector at the moment. So very interesting. Another question come through, Anthony, which is more related to the rare earth magnet recycling partnership that you talked about, the REAP partnership. What's been the outcome of that? What's come out of the REAP partnership?
Yeah, obviously our team of our R&D team have been engrossed in that over the last year or so. I mean, rare earths, they're rare, but what we find is that we've got those streams or seams of rare earths in the products that we purchase. So a lot of that, the outcome of that project was a better understanding of where those seams of rare earths are. And we focus initially on audio products, but we probably identified richer streams, and that will provoke that those richer streams will be the center of another project very innovatively known as SCREAM, which I'm not sure who comes up with these, but and that project will focus on the recycling of or recovery of those rare earths from things like electric motors, for example. But one of the other outcomes is the safe environment, collaborative environment that project has created. So it does allow relationships to build, and then non-commercial relationships, so we can work very closely with the other members of the value chain to create a fantastic result, really. So it's the environment, I suggest, that's been, and the relationships that we create and we build as a sort of trusted partner, really, which has also been a significant outcome to those to that project.
So that's another example, a bit like the green steel agenda, where we're finding that our customers and maybe our suppliers as well are wanting to work with us in much more closely than they maybe would have done in the past. Before, the car companies might just have given us materials to recycle, but now they're really wanting to work with us on in a lot more detail in that example. And that actually leads into another question that has come in, a couple of related questions perhaps you can have a look at. One is how open has the motor industry been to when it comes to collaboration, and do they recognised electric vehicle recycling as a shared challenge to resolve? And sort of related to that, someone else has asked, what do you foresee as the biggest challenge in electric vehicle recycling? You've mentioned rare earth magnet motors, but I guess there are other components that are at least equally challenging.
Yeah. In terms of that collaboration, if you stand back, and it applies to steel and it applies to automotive, it's just a seismic shift. It's a paradigm shift, isn't it, in terms of what these manufacturers are doing, and the scope and scale of what they've got to handle is absolutely enormous. And I guess what we see, we've got a key role within that change to try and facilitate it, to try and enable it, to try and be proactive with that technology. So we're there as a partner to be able to solve the problems for them. With regards to automotive, I guess my background was automotive, Roger, years gone by, and I recognise what big Goliaths they are, and sometimes those Goliaths are quite slow to change. And we've seen that historically with relationships, but I would say now it's very different. I think there is a hunger, there is a need. I think we are trying to be that trusted partner, or it's important for us to be that trusted partner, and that's creating engagement with those guys. We're finding our place. They understand what we can do. We understand what they need. And I think it's really progressing at a pace, to be honest, Roger.
And yeah, I think you mentioned the Recovus project, which is a collaboration involving EMR, various other recycling specialists, but also Jaguar Land Rover, BMW, and Bentley Motors, which is part of the VW group, and that's funded by the government's Advanced Propulsion Centre. So it's part of the overall national strategy to encourage electrification in the UK, and that's all centred around about collaboration on recycling and reuse of batteries, isn't it? And that project you mentioned earlier at Oldbury, where we're looking at reusing batteries in a battery storage system for the grid, that's come out of that Recovus collaboration. So it's really interesting to see how engaged everyone is, and we're certainly really enjoying that, aren't we, at the moment, Anthony? Just actually, there's quite a lot more questions have been coming through while we've been talking, and a couple more for Scott and Ian. Scott, what other equipment on our sites do you think could be switched to electric power once you've got the infrastructure in place?
Okay, well, I think definitely the main focus is on these cranes that work in a more sort of fixed position. So hence the reason for targeting the ship loading equipment is because it works in a quayside area. Other visions that we're looking at and certainly planning to install is equipment that's feeding fixed pieces of plants, such as the shredder in Liverpool. We're set to install a fixed, fully electric crane there in the not too distant future. And I know that we're looking at similar projects at other shredders and large shears around the country. Looking at items of plant that are a more traditional mobile plant that will move across our large sites in some instances. We've just purchased 2 fully electric forklift trucks. These are smaller pieces of equipment traditionally. Perhaps their workload isn't as great as some of the large handling equipment. but it's certainly it's a good step forward that will allow us to see how this works within our operations and how we can sort of scale that up moving forward.
That's great. Thanks very much. And sort of related question to that, maybe for Ian. Do you have plans to buy other electric cranes like Scott's one at Liverpool for our other sites?
So at the moment, we're making sure that all of our large handling equipment is E-enabled, but as a minimum, we want it to be hybrid. So Scott's already covered the challenges around full electrification, given the nature of what we do. But I'm very enthused by the early stages of these feasibility studies where we're looking at docking stations to be able to move the material handlers to those docking stations to be able to hardwire them in. And as Scott mentioned, making really good progress on the light commercial vehicles. So typically our small vans for the maintenance teams, and some of the commercial teams now enjoy electric vehicles as well. So it's much easier, given the limitations of battery technology at the moment, to fully electrify our small mobile plant. And I would say all of our forklifts and small electric plant that we're buying now will be electric.
That's a big change in the way you're operating your business. That's great. Thanks very much. Another question, I think we're going to have to finish quite soon, but another question maybe for you, Anthony. You mentioned MBA Polymers, your plastics recycling business, as part of your area. What products does MBA Polymers produce?
I'll go back a little bit. I find this process end to end absolutely incredible. So Ian and Scott will shred end-of-life products, vehicles, aircraft, demolition, shred it all up into little bits and pieces, and then it gets handed over to the separation team of two separation facilities, where it'll go through a number of separation stages. Then it goes over to Worksop, our plastics processing plant, and there it'll go through a number of other separation stages. And every time we're concentrating up those plastics, probably about 30, 40 separation stages in total. Nobody touching it, completely hands off. We'll then really target 5 key polymers, amongst those polypropylene, ABS, and our target, and what we do achieve, is we'll generate a pellet, a black pellet. We only do black, unfortunately, but a black pellet that will go into new products. So they could be for cosmetic packaging, they could be household goods, could be the Hoover that you mentioned earlier on. That's one of our customers, or they could go into new vehicles. So I do find it incredible. It is quite amazing what we do.
That's great to see your enthusiasm.
They're all low carbon as well, Roger.
Low carbon, of course.
Low carbon.
Probably
products.
A quarter of the or 10% of the impact of virgin material.
Yes.
And so you're a bit like Henry Ford. You can have any colour as long as it's black.
Well, actually, Roger, we're going to move into white. So
you're going to move into white?
Yes, we're going to move into white as well. Yeah, that's it.
And where does white come from?
Fridges.
From fridges, of course.
Fridges, yes. So one of Ian's other one of Ian's projects, so fridge recycling. So we're developing that stream.
Okay, great. Another question just come through. Would you consider some friendly competition between locations to reduce the carbon impact? So could we have a decarbonisation league within our operations? Do you want to? That's a fresh idea that's just come in there from our listeners. What do you think?
I'll take a little bit.
Do you want to take that?
Actually. I think that it comes back to that question: if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And one of the things that very embryonic at this time, but we're actually looking at carbon accounting. So instead of looking at a P&L or associated with that P&L, we have a carbon account for each facility, and then hopefully at that point in time we can compare. But obviously we're looking at utilisation, aren't we, as well, which is a good measure.
Right, so a good suggestion there. Thanks very much. Just let's have one last question, and I'm not quite sure who wants to answer this one, but does the quality of metal that we take in from our suppliers, metal dealers, or from the public, or people dropping their materials at household waste recycling centres, How does that, does the quality of that material affect how much energy is needed to process it, and therefore how much carbon is generated in the process of us doing that processing? Do you want to talk about that, Scott? I can see you nodding.
Yes, it definitely does. We particularly working towards these green metals, the quality constraints that we have to work to and produce quality towards. If we have a material that's a poorer quality from a start point, we have to process it, increase the levels of processing so that we can extract the non-metallics and produce that quality material, whether that be putting it on through secondary processes or indeed improving the processes that we currently have in place to do it first time around. It all adds to that carbon consumption.
So that's quite probably a nice way to finish, actually, that where Scott is saying explaining the practical challenges he has to make these high quality materials that increasing the steel industry is going to demand. It's going to require a partnership all the way down the supply chain. Our commercial people need to be working with our suppliers, and our suppliers need to be working with their suppliers to raise the purity and the quality of the material all the way through the supply chain so that we can reduce the carbon impact of the whole operation. And that probably leads us on to a little trail for our last session next week, same time, same day, when two of our senior commercial managers, Steve Barham and Wayne Hill, will be here with Ian again, talking about how we are working with our partners upstream and downstream to decarbonise our commercial, our operations through our commercial activities. So I think that will be really interesting and a nice fitting end to our discussion about logistics and then operations and then commercial. So yes, join us same time next week. Thank you very much for joining us. And thanks particularly to our panelists, Ian, Scott and Anthony, for their time coming here today and in preparing those videos in advance. Thanks finally to you for joining, so many people for coming and watching this session. We really appreciate your interest and we look forward to working with you in the future. So once again, thanks very much. I'm Roger Morton. Join us same time next week.